While we did a few facehugger anatomy videos a few years ago, it seems that Alien Earth is rewriting everything we know about the facehuggers, what's inside them, what they're made up of, and how exactly the embryo functions. If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you're brave enough to face some of the juiciest spoilers from Alien Earth Episode 3. Now, it was always believed that facehuggers contain an embryo that went inside the host to gestate into a chestburster. But more recently, a comic called Alien Cold Forge tried to canonize something called the Plagiarus praepotens, a black goo-like mutagenic substance, which led to the creation of a chestburster inside a host. I mean, even Alien fandoms got misled and started to believe that the embryo didn't exist. However, Alien Earth got back to the basics and sort of recanonized the embryo, which Timothy Oliphant's Kirsch extracts from the facehugger at the end of episode 3, and lets it get inside Joe Hermit's lung to gestate. In this video, we're gonna explore the facehugger's revised and detailed anatomy, in addition to learning what happens to a person when a facehugger does its thing on them. But before I begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. And now, let's begin. Number 1. Can the blue mist from Alien 1979 stop a facehugger from unleashing? So before I get into the facehugger, I think it would make more sense to quickly explore what exactly the first home of the facehugger looks like, and what are the several layers it has. Let's start with the blue mist. So the first time we saw the blue mist was actually in the first ever Alien movie. Yeah, Ridley Scott's original from 1979. And it seemed like the mist was some sort of a protection or defense mechanism used by the engineers to protect themselves against the Ovomorphs and the facehuggers they hide. Yeah, as long as the blue mist is there, the facehuggers seem to be unreactive. Although the mist was seen in several video games later on, we saw it next in Alien Romulus, as far as the movies are concerned. Even by this point, the purpose of the mist was left unconfirmed, but Alien Earth confirms that the mist can in fact render the Ovomorphs inactive, in the sense that they do not react to external stimuli, and do not detect the presence of a host. You see, in the second episode of the live-action TV show, Wendy's brother Joe disrupts the blue mist, and that leads one of the Ovomorphs to open. But before the facehugger could come out, the xenomorph from USCSS Maginot attacks Joe and takes him with itself. Number 2. What are the several layers of an ovomorph? Thanks to Kirsch, we now know the exact measurements of an ovomorph. Although there might be a degree of variation between different eggs, the one that Kirsch measures is 54 centimeters wide and 77 centimeters tall. So on the orders of Cavalier, Kirsch, Curly, and Toodles bring the ovomorph to cut it open and see what's inside. So Kirsch brings a mechanical saw and starts cutting through the shell, which proves to be quite tough for its rather organic and fleshy look. It takes Kirsch some degree of effort to cut through the outer layer, and while he does that, one can see the dust from the shell as well as some transparent liquid fall from the egg. Kirsch uses his hands to spread open the portion where he made the incision, and we see a layer that looks like fat. In fact, if you've seen a goat or similar beast being skinned, you would in fact see the similarities. Take a look at Tywin Lannister doing that on screen. Then there's this one, where an actual goat is being skinned. Notice the similarities in color of the fat layer in both of these cases, and the layer of fat in the ovomorph. In fact, if you look closely, you can even find some thick veins, almost like arteries, to pump the required fluids throughout the ovomorph. Kirsch keeps on going deep and removes at least 3 different layers of organic matter before finally finding the facehugger, which was all anxious and in a sack. It could guess that that was not how it was supposed to get out of the ovomorph, and that someone had intruded inside its previously safe haven. So it's safe to say that inside the hard and protective layer of an ovomorph, there are several layers of organic fat-like material. These protect the sac, which is filled with a thick, transparent liquid that houses a facehugger. Number 3. The facehugger's insides. After pulling the facehugger out of the ovomorph, Kirsch puts it on a table and knocks it out cold using electricity. Of course, the creature does its best to get free. It uses its tail and its multiple fingers, but to no avail. Next, Kirsch makes another incision using the scalpel and basically skins the facehugger, to reveal the similar fat-like organic matter inside. Now, you must know that the facehugger does not seem to have acidic blood all over its body. It's only after Kirsch cuts deep inside that the green organic blood spills out, yet it does not damage the facehugger's body. But that's not all. As you can see here, the creature also has some black substance within its body, kinda like a mild case of smoker's lung. But that's not cigarette tar. This black substance is actually the black goo, or a version of it, the same mutagenic substance that the engineers managed to weaponize and use for various purposes with a bit of tweaking. A version of the black goo was also seen in Alien Romulus, in which it is called Z01, and was the reason behind the existence of that horrified offspring hybrid creature. The last big reveal of Kirsch's little post-mortem surgery was the Chestburster embryo. He pulls the little guy out with the help of tweezers and drops him in a glass before emptying the thing in the tank, where Joe's lung was present. Although this video is all about the facehugger and its insides, I think I should just briefly point out how we see Wendy going all physically pained after listening to the painful screeches of the dead facehugger and those still inside Ovomorphs. You see, this is because she can hear sounds in the range of at least 77,000 Hz, while the human ear can only hear up to 20,000 Hz. This is why she would later be able to communicate with the xenomorphs. Anyway, after Kirsch drops the transparent tadpole-like chestburster embryo in the tank, it examines the lungs, finds that it's alive, and gets inside the lung to gestate, and the creature that would later rupture the lung burster, would have this light brown head instead of the regular black one.
It's tearing your skull.
Number 4. Other features of the facehugger. Needless to say, facehuggers are one of those creatures that seem simple on the surface, but get more disturbing the closer you look. So let's get down to the basics and see what we know about the facehuggers apart from the new info that surfaced in the TV show. So the design of the facehuggers is basically like a skeletal hand, with a long spine-like tail, giving them both speed and grip. They've got 8 finger-like legs that let them scuttle across surfaces with ease, and the tail can coil tight enough to launch them through the air or wrap around a host's neck to hold them in place. The whole build feels borrowed from real-world arthropods like crabs or arachnids, but with an extra dose of nightmare biology. Underneath, on the ventral side, is where things get even more disturbing. There's an orifice that hides a long, muscular proboscis, and a tube about half a meter in length that's built to deliver a xenomorph embryo. The design bears an eerie resemblance to aspects of human reproductive anatomy, which makes the process all the more invasive. Once a facehugger attaches, its digits clamp tight around the head and the tail cinches the throat, creating a grip that's nearly impossible to break. Attempts to remove them can tear skin or worse. And even if someone tried, the creature's acidic blood guarantees that you won't get it off without consequences. The tail doesn't just steady the hold. Documented cases show facehuggers using it to strangle or cut off air to a host, almost like an insurance policy to keep the victim still while the implantation goes forward. Their coloring is like fleshy beige that makes them look uncomfortably close to human skin. They're alien and familiar at the same time, which is part of what makes them so unnerving. They also carry their own life support system. Near the tail's base sit paired bladder-like sacs that act like bellows, pumping oxygen into the host's lungs during the process. That's how the victim stays alive long enough for the embryo to settle in. The proboscis runs straight into the throat and begins the transfer, all while keeping the host sedated and breathing. Before this moment, though, the facehugger lies dormant inside its egg. It only springs to life when a living presence comes near, and that's thanks to a burst of bioelectric energy stored in its acidic blood. Once active, it relies on thermo-auditory senses similar to those of adult xenomorphs, homing in on warmth and sound. Usually it doesn't chase. Instead, it waits for curiosity or carelessness to bring a host close enough. Then it launches. But if the first attempt fails, facehuggers don't give up easily. They've been known to pursue fleeing targets with surprising persistence. Even without a host, they're not as fragile as they might seem. A facehugger can last up to 5 days outside of an egg, biding its time until a suitable victim crosses its path. And if the host dies mid-process or before implantation begins, the creature doesn't waste effort. It simply detaches and finds another. Number 5. What about a facehugger's host interaction and its reproductive role? When a facehugger detects a potential host nearby, it springs with frightening precision, secures its digits around the skull, and coils its tail around the neck. The grip alone can throw a victim into shock, but the creature doesn't rely on fear. Through direct skin contact, it delivers a cyanose-based paralytic chemical, carried efficiently into the body with dimethyl sulfoxide. Victims also show evidence of a neuromuscular toxin that induces unconsciousness within seconds. Even the Yautja, who are far tougher than humans, don't stand much of a chance. What's fascinating is how precise the facehugger is. It knows exactly how much toxin to inject, depending on the host's body mass, ensuring they stay alive, but their immune system goes offline. If its chemical tricks fail, the creature switches to brute force. The tail is strong enough to choke a victim like a boa constrictor, and has been proven to overpower even chimpanzees. Sometimes implantations happen while the host is still conscious, which makes the ordeal even more traumatizing. Victims report experiencing disturbing dreams and overwhelming panic as they suffocate, unable to scream or move. The facehugger has no sense of discrimination. Humans, predators, engineers, oxen, rhino-like aliens from Ryushi, scorpion-shaped organisms, serpents, and gorillas. Anything remotely viable can end up with a chestburster in the making. If a host is too large for one, a group will swarm the target to bring it down. Once attached, the next phase begins: implantation. The proboscis slides down the host's throat, a grotesque dual-purpose device that keeps the victim breathing while simultaneously preparing the new xenomorph. Unlike the speed of the initial attack, implantation is a slow and meticulous process, stretching across hours. The proboscis ensures the embryo bonds seamlessly with the host biology. The facehugger doesn't immediately detach after this. It stays connected, guarding the integration of the developing creature. Depending on circumstances, this can last as little as 20 minutes or drag on for 16 hours. Once its work is done, it drops away and dies, having fulfilled its only purpose. For anyone trying to rescue a host mid-process, the odds are grim. Attempts to pull the facehugger off can rip skin straight from the victim's face, and that's if the acidic blood doesn't eat through both rescuer and host first. Killing the creature isn't much of an option either. Its internal fluids would only liquefy bone before anyone could celebrate. Its outer shell hardens soon after leaving the ovomorph, gaining the same chitinous durability we see in adult xenomorphs. Blunt force or even gunfire barely slows it down. The creature is designed to survive long enough to finish the job, and if it senses that its own survival is compromised, it shifts tactics entirely. Instead of preserving the host, it will strangle it with its tail, or drive the proboscis deeper, causing lethal internal injuries. This balance between preservation and destruction makes the facehugger one of the most ruthlessly efficient parasites in existence. Its entire lifespan is built around a single goal: implant the seed of the xenomorph and ensure it lives long enough to emerge. It doesn't care what species you belong to, how strong you are, or whether you resist. If anything, the more you fight, the harder it grips, adjusting its methods until your body becomes the unwilling vessel it needs. Number 6. What happens after the implantation? Normally, when something foreign enters your body, your immune system flips out and launches a full-scale attack. That's the entire point of immunity. Find the invader, fight the invader. But the xenomorph reproductive cycle has already accounted for this. A facehugger doesn't just put an embryo inside you and hope for the best. It chemically rigs your whole system. Its underbelly secretions, the same general area that delivered the sedative earlier, also pump in compounds designed to keep your immune system sedated. It's basically telling your body's defenses to stay quiet while the real work begins. With your immune response switched off, the embryo gets to grow without being treated as a threat, and that means you're left playing host without realizing you've lost control. Inside, things aren't exactly peaceful. The embryo starts drawing on your resources. Your organs feel the pressure because you're feeding two entities at once: yourself and a parasitic intruder. It's almost like being tricked into a pregnancy, or closer still, a parasitic twin situation. Think Cassandra Nova from the X-Men comics. She was born as Charles Xavier's parasitic twin. That's the kind of hijack we're dealing with here, except this twin grows fast and eventually tears its way out. This drain explains why hosts often wake from the implantation ravenously hungry. The alien's rapid growth burns through calories, and your body scrambles to keep up. Some hosts experience nausea or a raw throat from the invasive tube, which makes sense considering what's been shoved down there. Oddly enough, in many cases, the host feels deceptively fine for a while. No sharp pain, no obvious symptoms, nothing that screams killer alien fetus incoming. That might be because the embryo doesn't want to give itself away too early. Extended lore suggests it might secrete local anesthetics or other soothing chemicals, dulling discomfort so the host doesn't panic or thrash around. The result is a kind of eerie calm before the storm. The host moves through life thinking they've escaped the facehugger ordeal, when in reality, their body is nurturing something that has no intention of staying inside. The alien's reproductive strategy is as cruel as it is efficient, and it's all about keeping the host docile, keeping the body feeding the parasite, and when the time is right, letting the chestburster make its violent debut. Until then, the host is essentially walking around as a biological incubator, with no real clue that their body has been chemically silenced and turned into a temporary nursery. Number 7. What if the host is already pregnant? Now let's take one of the nastier hypotheticals. What if a facehugger grabs hold of someone who's already pregnant with a human baby? It's the kind of scenario that makes even seasoned alien fans wince, because it stacks one of the most terrifying sci-fi parasites on top of an already high-stakes human condition. Canon hasn't given us a straight example of this with a standard facehugger, but there's enough in the lore and expanded universe comics to sketch out what might happen. And the first thing to note is that facehuggers don't care. They aren't predators with some twisted honor code, like the city hunter in Predator 2 sparing a pregnant woman. Xenomorphs are built with compassion. They're built with one function in mind, and that's propagation. If the host is alive, breathing, and provides a viable environment, that's all that matters. So yes, a pregnant host would still be fair game, and the result would likely be a double pregnancy, one human fetus and one alien embryo. Once implantation happens, the obvious question is whether the human fetus can survive alongside a growing chestburster. The alien embryo usually develops in the thoracic cavity, while a human fetus grows in the uterus. In theory, that separation of space could let both exist for a time without immediate interference, but the stress inflicted on the mother's body is a different matter. The facehugger's cocktail of chemicals, the induced coma, and the strain of feeding the embryo would all create conditions hostile to a normal pregnancy. Nutrients and oxygen would be redirected toward the alien, leaving the fetus compromised. Miscarriage would be a strong possibility even before the chestburster makes its inevitable exit. There's also the dark reality that as the alien embryo expands, its demands grow too. It could start depriving the fetus of what little resources remain, and since xenomorphs aren't known for subtlety, the embryo could end up consuming or destroying the fetus outright if it sensed competition for nutrition. Even if it doesn't, the simple fact is that the human baby's survival depends entirely on the mother's body functioning long enough to carry it. When the chestburster erupts, that chance ends immediately. The odds of a fetus making it to term in that situation are next to non-existent. There's one piece of cinematic evidence to push this idea further, though it had a different variant. In Aliens vs. Predator Requiem, the predalien, itself a young queen, actively seeks out pregnant women and implants embryos straight into their wombs. Those embryos cannibalize the human fetuses and then tear their way out in multiples, proving that from the xenomorph perspective, pregnancy doesn't make a host off limits. Instead, it makes them more valuable. Number 8. What if a pregnant woman was infected with Z01 or the black goo? Z01 sounds like something you'd find tucked away in a restricted Weyland-Yutani lab file, and in a way, that's exactly what it is. At its core, it's a distilled, weaponized version of the black goo, the same ancient bioweapon we've seen appear across alien lore, from Scott's Prometheus and Covenant, all the way to its mention in Alien Romulus. The goo has always been messy business. Depending on who you ask, the engineers either created it as their greatest tool, or accidentally unleashed it after stumbling onto something they barely understood. Some fans argue they reverse-engineered it from naturally evolved organisms, while others think they made it from scratch. Either way, it's the stuff that seeds and destroys life with equal ease. David turned it into his own little science project, using it to piece together the modern xenomorph. In Romulus, though, it's another synthetic, Rook, who keeps the nightmare alive. He extracts the goo not in its raw state, but through a xenomorph's biology, refining it into something new, Z01. On paper, this serum promised miracle cures, rapid generation, and healing that defied logic. In practice, it was a ticket straight into body horror, and Kay ended up the tragic proof of that. Kay had been pregnant, a detail she only told to Rain. Oh, and the father of the baby was actually Bjorn, Kay's cousin. Anyway, when the xenomorph drone dragged her off, tail impaled and bleeding, it ironically saved her from becoming a chestburster host, since the wound made her unsuitable. Tyler and Rain later found her alive, but barely holding on. Rain, juggling her own fight, sent Kay back to the Corbellin, in hopes that she'd be at least safe. Kay's thoughts stayed fixed on her unborn child. She wanted that baby to survive, to mean something beyond the horror all around them. That's where Z01 came in. Rook had painted it as a cure, a safeguard, and in her desperate state, Kay took the gamble. She injected herself, convinced it would help her body heal enough to protect her child. For a moment, it seemed to work. She felt stronger, her pain dulled, her hope renewed. But by the time Rain came back and opened her cryopod, everything had shifted. Kay wasn't recovering, in fact, she was delivering. Not a human infant, but an ovomorph. The egg matured at an impossible speed, leaking acid through the Corbellin's floor when Rain tried to destroy it. When Rain tracked it down again, it had already hatched. The creature inside was something new, something no one had prepared for. It wasn't fully xenomorph, wasn't fully human, and wasn't fully engineer, but a blend of all three. Its body bore the biomechanical ridges and texture of a xenomorph. Its size, strength, and pale muscular frame seemed like an engineer. Yet its curiosity, its feeding instinct, even the way it moved, all of these had an eerily human edge. Most disturbing was the way it fed. Well, it fed by locking its inner jaw onto Kay's breasts, which were now filled with black goo-infused breast milk. The 701 had rewritten her physiology, so even her milk became fuel for this new hybrid life form. Kay had not just birthed it, she had become its food source, her body reshaped to keep it alive. The process broke every rule we thought we knew about the xenomorph cycle. Normally, we expect the facehugger implant chestburster sequence. However, Z01 turned pregnancy itself into a weaponized incubation system. The hybrid started like a fetus, but not through normal conception. It needed Z01 as a catalyst. From there, it formed inside a pseudo-egg, a fleshy acidic shell acting like an artificial womb. Once born, it bypassed the larval chestburster stage entirely, arriving nearly fully formed. By the time rain caught up to it, it had already grown larger, its long tail slicing through metal and its face carrying the uncanny imprint of an engineer. Kay's dream of saving her child had twisted into birthing a creature that should not exist. This all ties back to the black goo's nature. The compound, formerly named chemical A03959X.91-15, has never been stable or predictable. Marvel's comics even canonized it as part virus, part mutagen, part something no one fully categorizes. Millions of microorganisms churn inside it, rewriting DNA on contact. Sometimes it destroys, other times it heals, and when it crosses paths with reproductive systems, it creates hybrids. We've seen this in hints before. The royal jelly of xenomorph queens, for example, is the derivative strain of the goo, producing new castes like praetorians or even more queens. David, after years of experiments, believed the goo was designed to wipe planets clean while leaving them habitable, a kind of cosmic reset button. He saw it as both a weapon and creation tool. Its enzymes mutate DNA, spread cancer, mend wounds, even force entire species into new evolutionary paths. The closer it gets to embryos or unborn life, the more radical the mutations become, which explains why Kay's pregnancy became the perfect storm. On the other hand, Eldon, a synthetic infected by the goo in Dark Horse's comics, turned into a grotesque fusion of engineer and machine, self-aware, yet spreading his mutation through touch. He warped humans, xenomorphs, and even Yautja who got too close. That infection pattern shows how predictable the goo can be once it starts rewriting. Rook must have known this, but he still pressed 701 into Kay's veins. His goal wasn't her survival, it was data. If she lived, it meant Z01 worked under stress. If she died, at least the serum's byproducts would manifest in some useful way. Either outcome helped Weyland-Yutani's file on the substance, and as twisted as it is, that's exactly what happened. Kay became living evidence that 701 could create hybrids outside the normal xenomorph cycle. She carried it, birthed it, and even biologically supported it afterward. The offspring itself symbolizes everything wrong with the company's obsession. Pale-skinned like an engineer, serrated teeth shining like a xenomorph, human-like intelligence gleaming through its movements, and a feeding link back to its mother. It was the kind of creature that could only exist through interference, through playing God with the substance the engineers themselves may not have fully controlled. Z01 wasn't a miracle drug, it was a rewrite button pressed against nature's code. And Kay, desperate, terrified, and alone, became the host that proved it worked. She wanted to save her child. What she gave the universe instead was something inhuman that still carried her DNA, her black goo-altered milk, and her tragedy woven into its very being. Marvelous verdict. Should you get impregnated by a facehugger? The short answer is no. You definitely don't want a facehugger anywhere near you. Once it latches on, your body stops being yours. It paralyzes you, takes over your breathing, and keeps you alive only to serve as an incubator. You lie there unconscious while it works on turning your insides into prime real estate for a xenomorph embryo. The thing even alters your cells and shuts down your immune responses, so nothing interferes with this little project. The worst part is you don't even realize it's happening. You're in a coma-like state, unaware, while the creature inside grows stronger by the hour. Eventually, it bursts out of your chest, killing you in the process, which makes facehugger reproduction one of the most disturbing strategies in science fiction. For Alien fans, knowing the specifics makes the whole concept even scarier. You aren't fighting, you aren't resisting, you're just along for the ride until the end. So if you ever find yourself face to face with one of those leathery eggs, remember, no amount of curiosity is worth ending up as an incubator. In space, no one can hear you scream. Stay safe out there, and maybe invest in a good space helmet. That's all from my end in this video. If you feel like you want to leave a suggestion, correction, or request, please feel free to use the comment box. You know I'll be waiting to hear it.